Hey YouTube, today we're going to talk about something that I've briefly gone over before, but I've never really went in depth and talked about what the differences is. What I'm talking about is the difference in a single action handgun and a double action handgun. And what I have here in front of you is I have examples of both types of actions in revolver and semi-automatic. And before we go any further, I'm going to let you know that all these handguns on here are not loaded. They've all been safety checked, and as I pick them up, use them as examples, I will show you that they're not loaded. So what are we talking about here? We're going to talk about single action versus double action, and what does that actually mean? Well, I'm going to show you a couple examples here. I'm going to show you exactly what it means, and we're going to start off with this revolver here. And before we go any further, I'm going to show you that this one is not loaded. If you look at each cylinder here, there is nothing in either one of them. All 6 rounds that this thing holds, all the cylinders are empty. So what we have here, this is a Heritage Rough Rider single action only revolver, and this was chambered in 22 caliber. It can do 22 Magnum or 22 long rifle depending on which cylinder it's in it. This one happens to have a 22 Magnum cylinder in it right now. And what does a single action mean? A single action means every time this thing's fired, it has to be cocked. So when I pull this hammer back here, I can pull the trigger, and if I pull the trigger again, nothing will happen. So single action means every time that this revolver fires, it has to be cocked every single time. So what are the advantages to that? Well, the advantage is every time that you take a shot, it's going to probably be one of your most accurate shots, because when you are firing single action, the trigger pull is usually pretty light on it. So you can really steady your hand, get your hold right on it, and really pay attention to your hold. And when you pull it, you're going to have a very accurate shot if you are very well practiced and know how to shoot and hold it still. So that's your advantage to it. What is your disadvantage to it? Well, it's very simple. Disadvantage is you can't rapid fire or anything, because every single time you pull it, you have to cock the hammer. You're going to have a great trigger pull, but you're going to have to stop in between every shot and cock this hammer. So that's going to be a pretty big disadvantage to it. You're not going to be doing any speed shooting or anything like that, but it's a little Heritage Rough Rider single action revolver. Now, we're going to compare that to a double action revolver, and I'm going to show you this one's not loaded. This is a Smith & Wesson 686 357 Magnum. This is an older pre-lock, no dash Smith & Wesson 686. Now, if you go to operate this, you can operate it the same way. You can cock this hammer back, and you can get a really good hold on this thing, get a real steady hold, and you can pull the trigger. But what you can also do is, when the hammer's in the lowered position, you can just pull the trigger, and it will still fire without cocking every single time. Now, what you lose here is your trigger. Your trigger is going to be a lot lighter when you shoot it in single action than when you do double action. When you pull this double action, it's significantly heavier trigger pull than it will be in single action. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages to having a double action revolver? Well, one of the advantages right off the bat is you can rapid fire this. As fast as you can pull this trigger, you can fire this thing if you have a trained finger on this and know how to let off of it. Now, what the disadvantages to it is, in double action, you have a lot heavier trigger pull. So if you're an untrained shooter, you may not be able to steady this gun as well when you have a heavy trigger pull. Now, this one's a poor example. This one's had an action job, and this trigger's exceptional on this. But most of them, the trigger pull's pretty heavy on this. So as you're pulling this back, and people that don't train every day can actually move this gun around trying to pull this trigger back, and it really affects the accuracy of the gun. But on single action, you're going to get an exceptional shot every single time, because trigger pull is going to be so light. But double action revolvers can fire in single action and double action, and a single action revolver will only fire in single action, and it will not fire again until you cock the hammer. Big difference. There's advantages and disadvantages to each. But what a lot of people don't realize when they start talking about double action handguns is they don't realize that they also have single action and double action and semi-automatics. So I'm going to pick this next one up here, and I'm going to show you that it's not loaded. This is a Wilson Combat Professional 1911, and I just got this one using an example because it's super cool looking, if I'm being honest here. But you can use any kind of Wilson Combat or any kind of 1911 you want. Now the 1911 is a single action only handgun. So what does that mean? Well, it means the same thing it meant with the revolver. When you cock it, it will go off. But when you pull the trigger again, it will not go off. The only way you're going to make this gun go off is to cock it and let it go off. Now, what a lot of people need to realize is with a 1911, since it does have to be cocked in order for it to go off, if you're using it as a carry gun, you have to have it in the cocked position. So you're going to have to put this thumb safety on. It has a safety here, and it also has a safety right here. It's called a grip safety. So that has to be engaged with your hand, and this safety has to be off. So if this safety's off and this isn't engaged, this gun will not go off, as you can see. If I push down on this, it will go off then. So people you have to carry this in what they call the cocked and locked position. The hammer has to be cocked, and this thumb safety has to be up and in the locked position, and that's how you will have it in your holster, just like that. And when you draw this out, now the disadvantage of this is you have to do an extra step and take the safety off of it before it's ready to go. Now, what is the advantage to it? Well, the advantage is this thing has an exceptional trigger, as all 1911. So your first shot, you're going to be able to steady this thing down, but when you're ready to shoot it, you better be ready to shoot it, because this thing's going to have a real light single action trigger on it. And the difference in this and a single action revolver is when you have this thing cocked and the safety's off, when you aim it and you shoot, and a semi-automatic gun, when this goes off, this slide's going to cycle back, load another round in the chamber, and guess what, folks? When the slide cycles back, the hammer's cocked and it's ready to shoot again. So you reset, shoot, cycles back, reset, shoot, cycles back. So you're actually going to be able to rapid fire this. You cannot rapid fire a single action revolver, but you can with this as long as the weapon is functioning correctly. So big advantage over a semi-automatic single action versus a single action revolver. You can rapid fire this if everything's functioning correctly, and everything will function correctly on this one because it's a top-notch premium 1911. So what are the disadvantages to it? Well, the disadvantages is going to be it's got all these safety mechanisms on it, and you have to train with that. So when you pull this gun out, you have to know that you have your hand depressed on this, and you have to train yourself to take that safety off for this gun to be ready. And this is your other safety, is your finger. It's not on the trigger. When you put your finger on the trigger, that's when it's ready to fire. And another disadvantage is if you're using this as a carry gun, your very first shot is going to be pretty light, as all of them will be. So you need to make sure that you're ready to take that shot before you do it for that initial shot. But they're all going to feel like that as it cycles. It's going to have an exceptional trigger. And I've said this a million times, you're not going to find a firearm, a handgun, that has a better trigger than a 1911. They don't make bad 1911 triggers, especially this one. This one is absolutely superb. Now, we'll move into this final one here. I'll show you that this one's not loaded. So this is a 6-hour P220, and this is an elite stainless model. This is the carry model, the real short one, and this one's also chambered in 45. Now, this is a double action semi-automatic hammer-fired gun. So what does that mean? It means the same thing it meant when I showed you the double action revolver. So you can cock this hammer back, and this gun will go off. But what it will also do is when you let off the trigger, you can pull it again, and it will go off every single time in double action. So you can cock it, fire it in single action, or you can pull the trigger and do it in double action. Now, same with the revolver. The trigger pull is going to be significantly lighter in single action than it will double action. So how do you carry this around, and what are the advantages and disadvantages to this? Well, I'm going to show you one of the biggest advantages to this is you would load a magazine in this thing, and then you would rack this slide and chamber around. And you're going to have this hammer cocked, the same thing you did with the 1911, but if you'll notice, there is no safety here, and there is no safety up here. So this gun is hot and ready to go, and you can't just have this in a chamber with this cocked. It could go off at any time. So if you look here, this is a slide stop. This has a second lever on it. So you would pull down on the second lever, and this drops a hammer into a safe position without it resting on the firing pin. And this is how you would carry this in the holster. And when you draw this out, you don't have to reach up for a safety or anything. You don't have to have your hand on the grip. It's ready to go, the same as a double action revolver. And your first shot is going to be double action, which is going to be a significantly heavier shot or heavier trigger pull than the single action. But once you fire that first shot, the slide's going to cycle back, and as you can see, the hammer's cocked. So then from then forward, for the rest of the magazine, you're going to reset and pull it, and it's going to be very light. It's going to be a light single action pull from there forward. So when you're at the range, you would load this magazine, you would rack the slide, and you don't have to use the decocker because you're aiming in a safe position, and every shot, even your first one, is going to be a single action pull, and you'll be able to do very accurate shots. Now, if you want to practice, you would do this, and you would do your decocker, and you can practice taking your first shot double action, and then the rest of them is going to be single action. So you train and you're very familiar with your firearm. So some of the advantages to a double action semi-automatic handgun is if you're carrying it, you don't have any safeties, you don't have an extra step when you're drawing it out. But the drawback is your first shot's going to be that hard, heavy trigger pull. So the disadvantages of this semi-automatic single action is when you have it in the carry position, when you pull it out, you have to make sure you have this grip safety on, and you have to make sure that you train yourself to take the safety off. But moving there forward, every shot's going to be exceptional, including the first one. It's just going to be a really nice trigger pull for every one of them. When you get into the revolver side, the advantages to single action on that one is every trigger pull is going to be nice because it's going to be single action. So what is the disadvantages? Well, you have to cock it every single time. They don't have a slide that will cock this one for you. So your finger, your thumb is the slide. Now, when you get into a double action revolver, you're going to have the option to do either one. You can do real slow, or you can do double action and just pull it and you can rapid fire it. But remember, any handgun that you use double action on is always going to be a significantly heavier trigger pull. So anyway, folks, I wanted to clear this up, and I wanted to use these examples. The ones on my left here are going to be your single actions, and the one on my right are going to be the double actions. And we'll go through them one more time. This is the Heritage Rough Rider Single Action 22. This is a Wilson Combat 1911 chambered 45 ACP, and it's going to be single action. We have a Smith & Wesson 686. It's going to be double action 357 Magnum revolver. And we have a Sauer P220 Elite Stainless, which is going to be a double action semi-automatic handgun. So if you have any questions on how any of these function, I have separate videos on each one of these guns. I just wanted to go through what single action versus double action was. Thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.